Now, in the last lesson, we used our tweet sentiment classifier, which we created inside our app by creating a new object from that class. And then we used a very simple prediction based off some text that we come up with on the spot, and we got our predictions back that seemed to be working pretty well. The next step, instead of classifying pieces of text that we come up with, is to use the tweets that we get back from our API call to Twitter using our particular search terms, such as at Apple or at Google or whatever it is that we want to look for. And in order to do that, we have to be able to parse this JSON that we get back so that we can pull out the value of the property full text. And the easiest way of parsing JSONs is, if you remember, of course, using Swifty.json. Now, as I mentioned in previous modules, you can also use a native Swift feature, which is decoding the JSON using the encoder and decoder. But in this case, because there are so many properties here that I would have to create a struct for, it's actually quite painful if all I want to use is just one piece of information. And in these cases, I still favor using something like Swifty.json because it just makes life so much easier. So let's go ahead and close down our Xcode project, and we're going to open up terminal. And I'm going to cd over to my Twitter Menti container folder, and then I'm going to say pod init, then open podfile -a Xcode. Now I have to write Xcode -beta because I'm currently using the Xcode beta. Now, when you're viewing this tutorial, hopefully the official version of Xcode 10 should have come out, and that will happen around the end of September. So if you downloaded the official version of Xcode 10 from the App Store, then make sure that you use just Xcode. But if you are doing this tutorial before October, then you'll have to open it inside Xcode beta. And the pod that I want to add is simply pod Swifty JSON, and make sure that you don't have any typos in there. Let's hit save and close this down, and then let's do pod install. All right, so the installation's complete. There's one dependency that was added, and I can now open my twittermenti.exe workspace file. So now if I expand my Twitter Menti folder and head back to my view controller, I can use that framework by importing Swifty.json. And just because it has trouble the first time of integrating those links, always make sure you do a Command B just to build and ensure that build succeeds. In case your pods have things that need to be updated to the latest settings, just click on this link and click Perform Changes, and that should get rid of all of your warnings. All right, so now back over here, we're going to try, instead of printing the results, we're going to parse the results. Now, if you need a reminder on how Swifty.json works, make sure you head back to the Klima module. And equally, if you don't want to use Swifty.json and you prefer using the Swift encoder decoder, again, check out the lesson when we talked about that in the Klima module. But in my case, I'm simply going to say let tweet equal results, which is the JSON object that we get back from our API call. And I'm going to tap into the result at the index 0 to get the first result. And then I'm going to tap into the property that is full underscore text. So let's try that. So in here, I'm going to put in the string full underscore text. And now I have to try and get the string result from this by writing dot string. Now remember, this dot string is a optional string because it might not be able to get anything using something that I've just typed in. So for example, I could have had a typo in here and I was trying to find an object that had a property of full text, which obviously doesn't exist. So this would return nil. And that's why this whole thing is an optional. So in order to keep everything safe, let's create an if let. So if let tweet equals results at index 0 of the property that is full underscore text as a string, then let's just go ahead and print out this particular tweet. And now I'm going to go ahead and comment out these two lines. And at this stage, if you hit run, you might not see anything happening, as in your app being launched. And it might be because Xcode somehow changed the project that you want to run to the Swifter iOS framework. And of course, running the framework doesn't launch an app or do anything. Instead, we have to launch the Twitter Menti app. So make sure that this is selected up here and then click run. And don't worry if you have some temporary red errors or warnings come up here. As long as you get build succeeded, then those will go away. All right, so our app has now been launched and we've got some text that has been printed in here. Yo, at Apple, running iOS 12 beta 4, and I keep having to reboot my phone. My phone almost called the cops. Man, this is the reason why you don't want to work with betas. But that is the tweet that we managed to get, and it's probably negative. This is live results, so if we search for @Apple on Twitter and try to find the first English tweet, you can see we've got this tweet from Malcolm. That is exactly what we found over there. And we've now passed it into a string from our JSON object. So that's working really well. But now we need to pass all of our tweets out of the JSON, and we want to add it to an array so that we can make a prediction for all the items in the array. So for that, we'll need a for loop. So we're going to say for I in, starting from the index 0 and going up to, but not including, index 100, because if we have a look over here at our JSON editor, you can see we have 100 items, but the last one has an index of 99. So our for loop is going to stop at 99, just before it reaches 100. And inside this for loop, we're going to run our if let statement to pass our tweet out of the results. And instead of using 0, we're going to use I. So that each time this loop runs, we increment the number here and we get the next tweet. And instead of printing the tweet, we're going to append this tweet to an array. And that array is simply going to be called tweets, and it's going to be an array of strings. So let's initialize it up here, and then let's say tweets.append new element, which is tweet. Tweets append tweet. We create a new array of strings called tweets, and we run a loop 100 times, and we pass the full text as a string out of the JSON for every single one of those 100 tweets. And for each tweet that we pass, we add it to our tweets array. So by the end here, we should have an array of tweets. So let's check it out. Now down here, you can see here's our array without any of the other parts. We've got all of our tweets here, not really having much structure, separated by commas in our array. So that's working perfectly. So we can go ahead and delete that. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to classify all of those tweets. Now, running a prediction is something that uses resources on the, either in this case is my Mac, or if this app was running on the phone, then it would be the phone. And it tries to use the CPU or the GPU to try and make that prediction. Now, we want to try and make this prediction in batch. So we want to be able to feed it our entire array of tweets and try to get a prediction for each and every one of them. So an array of predictions out instead of running it one by one. So the next thing we want to do is to be able to pass this array of tweets to our tweet sentiment classifier and try to get an array of sentiment classifications. So that is what we're going to do on the next lesson. For all of that and more, I'll see you on the next lesson.